Welcome back into Eye on Agriculture. I'm Brityne Rucker. Federal laws has established a procedure that railroads must go through when abandoning a rail line. This process creates numerous issues for farmers and ranchers and other landowners. We are joined now with Roger McEowen, professor of agricultural law and taxation at Washburn University. As always, Roger, a pleasure talking with you today.
Good to be with you, Brityne.
All right, let's jump right into it. What is rail banking?
Well, rail banking is the general term that's used to describe what you mentioned was that process for converting a rail line to a recreational trail, but yet keeping the possibility open that the trail could be reconverted back into a railroad.
All right, so what are some recent cases surrounding this?
Well, these cases focus on the issues that farmers and ranchers have with this whole process. And of course, there are issues with fences, there are issues with trash, there are issues with children and families accessing the trail, which is adjacent to your land that abuts the corridor. And so there are a whole host of issues, including the issue of property rights in terms of taking, whether the railroad actually owned an easement. Well, when they cease operating for railroad purposes, then if that's the property interest that they held under state law, then that abutting landowner should have that corridor revert back to them. And if not, then is that a constitutional taking that requires compensation? A couple of recent cases on this. There was a Kansas case on this that involved fencing issues along the rail line, and the trail group that assumes responsibility for operating the trail is also responsibility for maintaining the fences, as the court said. Another one involved a trail across Missouri. We've had issues with the Katy Trail in the past. This is different. And the court there on a takings issue said the railroad actually had acquired an easement and those abutting landowners were entitled to compensation when that did not revert back to them, but was in fact used for a trail. So there's a lot of money that's involved in that case.
So what are some final things that landowners need to keep in the back of their mind?
I think the property right issue is probably the biggest one for a lot of abutting landowners. They always want to check to see what the railroad actually owned. And if that railroad ceases using the line for railroad purposes, if all they had was an easement, then they're entitled to that abutting corridor to revert back to them. If they had it in fee simple ownership, then the railroad can do what they want with it. But that's one of the biggest issues for landowners. Then, of course, the trash issue and the fence maintenance issues and all of that. But I think the property right issue is probably the big one.
All right, Roger, as always, we learn so much from you. As always, thanks so much for coming on and chatting with me today. Everyone stick around. Eye on Ag will be back after the break.